Hello. Hey, we're still talking about lockout here because this whole module could be lockout because it's that important. But now we're going to look at something from a little different perspective. We're going to look at, if they're here, there it is. We're going to look at letters of interpretation. Now, we're going to do this in another language, even though sometimes OSHA writes things that look like they're in another language. But if people are confused or want some interpretation of the OSHA regulations, they can write to OSHA and they'll get an answer sometimes. This is one here that the answer came back on November 30, 2010, and their letter request was made on August 20th, 2007. So there's OSHA. They give you 15 days. They take 3 years. That's their government for you, I guess. But that's one of the things I don't like about OSHA. But that happens. Usually, though, they're not that bad, but usually they're pretty bad. Okay. So anyhow, your paraphrased questions and our responses are provided below. Paraphrase just means we're going to say it in our own words, and that's all. Several questions addressing very similar issues have been grouped together. Please note that you can find additional guidance regarding controlling hazardous energy sources at OSHA Instruction, CPL 200-147, the Control of Hazardous Energy Policy Enforcement. And this is they're kind of like their manual for their inspectors, I think. Yeah. And it's got a lot of stuff in it, a lot of stuff to go through too. So here we go with this letters of interpretation. Now, the first one is exclusive control. Here's the paraphrasing of the question. Maintenance is to be performed on a single piece of shop machinery, such as a lathe or drill press. The machine has a single energy source, which is a disconnect switch, located in clear view within 5 unobstructed feet of the machine on an adjacent wall. An electrician placed the disconnect switch in the off position, removed the fuses from the disconnect switch and the machine's control panel, and verified that the machine would not start. In order for another employee to reach the disconnect switch, they would need to walk past the employee performing maintenance on the machine. Question 1, is the disconnect switch under the exclusive control of the employee performing the maintenance, or is a lockout or tagout device still required to be placed on the disconnect switch? What do you think? Let's see what OSHA says. Reply, OSHA standard at section 1910.147 includes provisions to protect employees performing servicing or maintenance of equipment from unexpected energization or startup. Section 1910.147A2 application states this standard does not apply to the following: work on cord and plug connected electrical equipment for which exposure to the hazards of unexpected energization or startup of the equipment is controlled by the unplugging of the equipment from the energy source and by the plug being under exclusive control of the employee performing the servicing or maintenance. The exception applies only to equipment that is de-energized through a cord and plug connection, and not to other forms of energy isolation devices, such as a disconnect switch. Therefore, the disconnect switch described in the scenario above will need to be locked out and tagged out in accordance with 1910.147. And you can kind of see why, because they put this exception in there of something that's had it's a simple piece of equipment. And they thought, well, do we really need to have elaborate protection for a simple piece of equipment? And probably not. So they said, all right, you plug it, you unplug it, you keep that plug in the exclusive control of the person doing it. So now what happened is people do this, and you'll see it a lot. They take a portion of a standard exclusive control, and they're going to now apply this across the board to everything. And that's not the way it goes. You can only apply that exclusive control to this. So question 2, under the scenario above, if the machine is connected via cord and plugged to a wall receptacle within 5 feet of the machine, and an electrician unplugs the plug from the wall receptacle, is the plug considered to be under the exclusive control of the employee? Well, let's see what they said. The lockout tagout requirements of section 1910.147 do not apply to cord and plug connected equipment if the equipment is unplugged and the plug is in the exclusive control of the employee who is performing the servicing or maintenance of that equipment. Under the exclusive control of the employee means that the authorized employee has the authority to and is continuously in a position to prevent or exclude other individuals from re-energizing the machine or equipment during servicing or maintenance activity. See OSHA instruction so-and-so. policy and enforcement. I'm going to read it. And the scenario described, the plug may not be close enough to the employee to be under exclusive control. The employee would need to be in a position to exert the degree of control necessary to prevent another employee from inadvertently plugging in the machine. So OSHA's getting kind of strict on this, and they should be. It's an exception to the policy, and these restrictions should be enforced strictly. So they're saying it's kind of too general. So I guess they said it was 5 feet away. So like you said, there wasn't enough information there for to give a definitive answer. All right, another one. Electrician is replacing the ballast on a fluorescent light. The electrician uses the light switch on the wall to de-energize the fluorescent light. He verifies that the light will not work after the light switch has been turned off before changing the ballast. I wonder how he does that. How do you verify the light won't work? You turn it on, right? All right, anyhow. The light switch is located in the room where the work is being performed, as in direct sight of the electrician. The electrician is in a position where he will know if another person tries to operate the light switch. In this scenario, electricians normally work in pairs, where one performs the work while the other stands next to the light switch. Is the light switch under the exclusive control of the electrician? There's a lockout device still required to be placed on the light switch. Kind of already answered, didn't they? OSHA Subpart S electrical standard section 1910.333 applies to this question because it involves an employee exposed to contact with parts of fixed electric equipment or circuits. Unlike section 19.147, the standards in Subpart S do not include an exclusive control exception. Instead, Subpart S standards have their own lockout and tagging requirements for the control of hazardous energy. That circuits provides that circuits energizing the parts shall be locked out or tagged or both in accordance with the requirements of this paragraph. In the scenario described, the light switch may be activated while work is being performed, as the work area is not restricted to others. Moreover, such an activation can occur prior to the worker advising another entering employee that electrical work is being performed. Thus, the electrician, exposed worker, replacing the ballast would not be protected from the existing hazard designed to be guarded against electrical. So the couple of things happened in this one. Number one, they switched from 19.147 to 333, which anything that starts with a 3 is Subpart S or electrical. And so this comes under electrical, and electrical does not have that exception of, and also you can see how the employer did. They took that exclusive control thing. Now they're going to just throw that all over the place. Can't do that. So I'm guessing OSHA by now, after this scenario, is probably onto them by now. All right, periodic inspections, section scenario 3. Section 1910.147C4I provides that procedures shall be developed, documented, and utilized for the control of potentially hazardous energy when employees are engaged in the activities covered by this section. Section 1910.147C6I goes on to require periodic inspection of the energy control procedure at least annually to ensure that the procedure and the requirements of the standard are being followed. That's the scenario. A group whose primary function is to perform testing of hardware has 2 employees who have been qualified as authorized employees to perform lockout of the machines when performing maintenance on any given machine. So there's 2 people. Question 4, in order to meet the requirement in section 1910.47C6IA, can one authorized employee who is not performing the lockout procedures observe/inspect a second authorized employee who is performing the lockout procedures? Yes, periodic inspection shall be performed by an authorized employee other than the one utilizing it. So they basically, without reading all this, yeah, they can do that. The one person can inspect the other one. And I'm going to read the whole thing, but that's basically what it says. And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, it says an authorized employee and the other person is an authorized employee. So you only got 2 people. So kind of, not only that, that's kind of the way they have to do it. Question 5, is every lockout procedure required to have a periodic inspection, or can lockout procedures be grouped for machines that are of similar construction and operation? This is an interesting one too, one you might run up against. Reply, an employer may group distinct procedures associated with similar machines or equipment and consider the group of distinct procedures to be a single procedure for purpose of conducting a periodic inspection if the machines or equipment in the group have the same or similar types of control measures. Grouping energy control procedures for same or similar machines or equipment for inspection purposes may streamline the inspection and review process, since there'll be a smaller number of procedure groups than individual procedures. Thus, an employer may elect to group procedures as described above, and then inspect a representative number of such employees implementing one procedure within each group. This approach is acceptable as long as the inspection sampling reasonably reflects plant servicing and or maintenance operations and hazardous energy control practices for the procedure being inspected. So that one they said it was okay. Question 6. Is the periodic inspection of a lockout procedure required to be performed while the actual lockout sequence is being performed, or can it be a review of the written lockout procedure with the authorized employee at a later date? Reply: the periodic inspections must contain at least two components. One, an inspection of each energy control procedure, and two, a review of each employee's responsibility under the energy control procedure being inspected. Each energy control procedure must be separately inspected at least annually to ensure that the energy control program is being properly utilized. At a minimum, these inspections must provide for the demonstration of the procedures and must be performed while authorized employees perform servicing and or maintenance activities on machines or equipment. So you can't dummy it up. You can't do it in a classroom. You have to actually look at it while they're doing it. Scenario 4. A machine is scheduled to be removed from the site. An electrician turns the disconnect switch to the off position and applies the company's standardized lockout device while he disconnects the power supply cables from the machine. The machine is removed from the site and no other equipment is connected to the disconnect switch. To keep it from being operated, the electrician leaves the standardized lockout device attached to the disconnect switch. This arrangement might be in place for an indefinite period of time, although no maintenance work is to be performed. So, Scenario 4. Okay, so question 7. Can the employer's standardized lockout device be used, or is this a violation of shall not be used for other purposes, since no one is actually performing maintenance and the lockout devices are basically being used as a configuration lock to maintain the configuration disconnect switch? Now, this is a pretty intelligent question here, because that's a little bit in a little bit of a gray area. But the answer is, lockout devices and tagout devices shall be singularly identified, shall be the only devices used for controlling energy, and should not be used for other purposes. OSHA considers the lockout device described above as being used for hazardous energy control purposes for this entire period. Thus, this practice is not prohibited by section so-and-so. In other words, it's still locked out. It'll be locked out for years. Nothing says it has to lock out. Well, they kind of mentioned lockout for as long as it's taking place, but they're saying, all right, this you can lock it out forever. Although I would think just pulling the wires out of it, not having anything coming through that box would be fine. But this makes sense. They lock it out so nobody can mess with it. So that's a good idea. Scenario 5. A company develops a generic energy control procedure for machines that are similar in operation, construction, have a single power source, air handling unit, for example. The procedures include data requirements such as the type and location of the machine, as well as 1, the purpose of the procedure, the authorization, type of energy source to be isolated, and a general sequence of shutdown and startup. Question 8, if a machine is powered by a single source, does the energy control procedure require more detail, or can they be as simple as addressing only the steps defined in section so-and-so, which I'm not going to read? The procedure shall clearly, and there's OSHA states, this is the reading from this 1910-47 C4II. The procedures shall clearly and specifically outline the scope, purpose, authorization, rules, and techniques to be utilized for the control of hazardous energy and the means to enforce compliance. This means that, at a minimum, the procedures must include the following elements, including but not limited to the following: a specific statement of the intended use of the procedures, a specific procedural steps for shutting down, isolating, blocking, and securing your machines and equipment to control hazardous energy, specific procedural steps for the placement, removal, and transfer of lockout devices and the responsibility for them, and D, specific requirements for testing a machine or equipment to determine and verify the effectiveness of lockout devices or tagout devices and other energy control procedures. The procedure would need to contain enough detail for authorized employees to have a clear understanding of the energy control measures so that the employees can follow the employer's established procedures for a machine lockout tagout to effectively control all types and forms of hazardous energy. Question 9. So that one, they kind of said, yeah, it might, maybe, if it follows, if it has all the other things in it. If the energy control procedure includes the sequence of steps to shut down, place in a safe working condition, apply lockout, and verify the effectiveness of devices, and a sequence of steps to remove the lockout device and re-energize the machine, must the procedure also include all the necessary steps to perform the actual maintenance? These people ever read it? No, based on the language, the steps needed to perform the maintenance are not required to be included in the energy control procedure, which makes a lot of sense. I mean, you might have SOPs for maintenance, but maintenance is in and of itself. Sometimes you don't know what you're getting into because maintenance could be something's broken. How do you know it's going to be broken? I mean, they're just malfunctioning. So, all right, clearance near electrical panels. Scenario 6, a toolbox that is 36 inches in height and mounted on wheels is temporarily placed in front of a 270-volt lighting panel. The placement of the toolbox does not prevent anyone from gaining access to the light panel to operate lighting breakers. The toolbox can easily be moved to provide the clear working space for an authorized employee to service the lighting panel in accordance with 29 CFR 1910-303 G1I. They're in 303 again here. So this is not 147. This is 303 electrical panels, subpart S. So, but I thought it was important. So, question, can the toolbox be temporarily placed in front of the lighting panel? No, the minimum required distance for workspace clearance must be maintained in front of live parts are listed in this table, which elaborates on the clear space requirements for such working spaces. This access and working space shall be kept clear at all times for operation and maintenance personnel and may not be used for intermittent incidental storage of non-permanent equipment or furniture, which could easily interfere with ready access to electric equipment in the event of an emergency. If the access is difficult or if obstacles must be moved, the resultant delay might allow a minor problem to become a major hazard. This issue was reviewed in a similar situation in an interpretation dated letter dated May 28th and be found on OSHA's website. So no, don't put anything in front of an electrical panel ever. That's what this says. All right, circuit breaker listed as a spare. During an inspection of a laboratory, it is determined that several circuit breakers are labeled spare in an electrical panel, but are in the on position. Inspector does not know whether the circuit breakers are actually providing power to a load or whether they have been actually turned on. Question 11, is it a violation of section 1910.303F if a circuit breaker in an electrical panel is labeled spare, but is in the on position, since one would not know if the spare circuit breaker is actually providing power to an unknown load? Well, the 1910.303F2 states each service, feeder, and branch circuit at its disconnect means or overcurrent device shall be legibly marked to indicate its purpose unless located and arranged so that the purpose is evident. Based on your scenario, each circuit breaker is legibly marked to indicate its purpose. However, it would be a violation of the standard if the circuit breaker identified as a spare fed wiring, since the label would be inaccurate. So basically, what they're saying is that's okay because it's marked properly if it wasn't. So, and then they're going to say, thank you for doing all this stuff. So OSHA, these letters of interpretation are interesting. Sometimes, no, not sometimes, all the time. They're a pain to slog through. And sometimes when you go on the OSHA website and you look up a standard, they start throwing you letters of interpretation. All you want to look at is standard. So that's what OSHA does. I don't know what you can do about that. So they're important because they help you understand things, and don't hesitate to go look for some of them. But they're not very well arranged. I think they could be doing a lot better job on that, but that's just my humble opinion. And but they are interesting to read as a rule. Sometimes you wonder if the person writing them has ever read the regulations, but you can see by this what we just read, though, what people will try to do, what management people frequently try to do. They'll try to take one thing out of one regulation and apply it to their benefit everywhere else. Oh, the exclusive control, let's just use that everywhere. No, you can't do that. So heed the regulations. Some of them are great. Some of them aren't that well written, but there's what we got to work with. And it's a law. So why you want to do something about it, write your congressman, but don't be or write the OSHA for a letter of interpretation, but follow the regulations. All right. Be safe.